Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a way to create beautiful eyebrows for your face, whether you have sparse brows or no brows at all. I'm going to start by applying a piece of tape right in the center of my eyebrows that's aligned with my nose. If you have some brows like I do, you can use what you do have for a natural brow as a guide. And if you don't have any brows, I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment as well. I came up with this idea about 2 years ago when I was trying to learn how to do the perfect eyebrows. Now grab your eyebrow pencil, align it with the dimple of your nose, and go straight up and make a little mark. Then from the same spot on your nose through the middle of your iris and make a mark. Then align your pencil from the outside of the nostril through the outside corner of the eye and make a mark. Now let's do it one more time a little slower so I know that you've got it. Dimple of the nose, straight up, make a little mark. Then from the dimple of the nose through the middle of the iris, and you're going to make a little mark. Then from the side of the nostril through the outer corner of the eye and mark. Now it's kind of like dot to dot. We're going to use the tape and align it slightly above my normal brow and go from the first dot to the second. If you have 0 hairs from having chemotherapy or something like that, you can estimate where your brows were by lifting your eyebrows and looking at the muscles in your face. Since I do have some natural hairs left, I'm going to go slightly above where my natural hairs are and place the tape down. Once I'm sure everything is straight, I'm ready to place my second piece of tape, like dot to dot from one to the other. Keep in mind, everybody's face is shaped differently and our preferences for eyebrow shapes are different as well. So don't be afraid to move yours to accommodate your likes. Now we're ready to make sure that the tops are even. Normally, I would just hold a piece of dental floss across my forehead horizontally to make sure that my tops are even. But since we're already using the tape today, I'm just going to tape a piece across. Additionally, to check that your tails are the same length, you can do the same thing with a piece of dental floss. Now in real life, you could actually do this in just a couple of minutes and have your eyebrows done in 3 to 5 minutes. Now that that's done, let's move on to our eyebrow products that we'll be using. You can literally use any brow powder that you have on hand. I'm using this one by Ulac. It's got a pomade on one side and a powder on the other. I want you to get a semi-fluffy eyeshadow brush and then get some of your eyebrow powder on it. Work it onto the back of your hand to see how dark it's going to be. Now you're going to apply this in light strokes, starting on the outside, overlapping the tape, and then gently work it toward the inner eye. We want most of the color to be around the arch and the tail. Toward that inner eye, we want it to be much more light. And if you have 0 hairs or you're not used to doing your brows at all, I want you to apply this very, very lightly. You can always go back and darken things in, but if you do it too dark, you're going to get what I call clown syndrome. Clown syndrome is where you wear something new and you're not used to seeing it on yourself, so you instantly don't recognize it as looking good and you feel like a clown. Especially with eyebrows for some reason. If you're not used to seeing yourself with eyebrows and then suddenly you have full, big, beautiful eyebrows, you're not going to see them as big, beautiful eyebrows. You're going to feel like a clown. My advice is to start out very light, get used to that look over a couple of weeks, and then gradually darken it up if you need it to be darker. Now, did you notice that I'm bringing this all the way into that middle tape? It's actually going past that mark that I had on my inner eye. And my reason for this is that I want to create a little bit of a shadow there where I actually should have some hair, but I overplucked. Now you can see it looks like I have 2 eyebrows. We'll talk about this tape in just a little bit, but I chose this because it does not hurt my skin to peel it off. Now that we have some really cool looking brows, let's fix a couple of things. I like to use a Q-tip for this, just to go around anything that looks a little too blocky, that's maybe a little too harsh looking, and remove anything that looks a little bit too dark. And that inner part is one of my pet peeve areas because I really want my eyebrows to look very natural when I'm out and about, and I definitely don't want anybody staring at me and thinking, wow, those are big fake brows. And that's that area where I said I was bringing it in a little bit closer to kind of create a shadow there. So there's no distinct ending spot, it just fades in toward the middle. For those of you who are new, this is a great part to stop. Get the first part of the video down, practice it for several weeks, And then once you feel like you're very comfortable with that, come back and watch the rest of this video. And I say that because I don't want you to try to take 3 or 4 new things and apply them all at once and end up with a mess and then be like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. Let's not do that. Let's remember that you have to crawl before you can walk. Let's move along. I was lucky enough to receive a sample of iMethod Beauty's prototype little pen that makes hair-like strokes. I'm really excited about this because I've tried a lot of these type pens and they really kind of fall short, but this one is really, really good. So as soon as they are out on the market, I will be letting you know. So we're just going to go in the areas where I have those shadows created, and I'm going to put a few hair-like strokes in there. With these type pens, it really helps to be very light-handed. Practice them on your hand a couple of times to see how they're going to look. And then light wispy strokes are going to give you those light marks. And then if you press a little bit harder, it's going to give you a fatter mark. The problem with a lot of these is that when you press a little bit harder on most of them, all 3 of those little lines just kind of combine into one. But I'm actually able to go through and do some wispy kind of hair-like strokes in there to make these look really good. And at the arch, you can make a couple of downward strokes and it mimics the way that your hair would actually grow. This is very optional. You definitely don't have to do this, but if you're just feeling like you're missing out on that sort of real hair-like stroke look, then this can be really helpful. On a normal day-to-day basis, I'm just putting 2 or 3 little hair-like strokes right toward my inner eye because, like I said, that's where I overplucked so much. If you do decide that you're going to use one of these hair-like stroke pens, definitely take your spoolie and run it over those areas to give them a little light blend when you're finished. That little bit of brushing is going to remove excess product so it doesn't look super fakey. Next, let's move on to fluffy brows. Even though I have very little for eyebrows, I use Billion Dollar Brows brow gel in the color taupe, and this actually has little tiny fibers in it that will pick up those hairs, it will color the hairs, hold them in place, and multiply those little hairs. So I can go from having hardly any brow at all to massively fluffy brows if I want to. And this, combined with the first step of applying the powder first, is one of my favorite ways to get a very natural looking wow brow. This is my #1 favorite eyebrow gel ever because of those little fibers and because it's waterproof and it comes in 3 colors. Not only will this build you a nice fluffy brow and hold those brows in place, but it will also cover up gray and silver and white brows as well. My #1 brow gel tip is to make sure that almost all of the product is cleaned off of the wand. This is especially important when you have a brand new container and it's really full. If you don't scrape off almost all of that product back into the little tube before you use it, it's going to just go on like a big blob. Once the wand has been cleaned off a little bit, then you can go in and just lightly go in and over those brows until they have the coverage that you're looking for. Well, let's go ahead and clean these up with a little concealer and a flat concealer brush. I think the trickiest thing about this is just making sure that you have the right amount of concealer on the brush. Too much and it's going to be a mess, not enough and it's not going to show up right. And that really just takes some practice. I usually start under my arch and then gradually bring it in to the center. And that way by the time I get to the center, it's really so little concealer that it just kind of disappears. Starting at the arch is just a personal preference of mine. It's a place where I can look at my eyebrow and tell if I'm actually keeping the same thickness between the left and the right. And then with whatever's left on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and clean up that outside tail. Just in case anything else is out of bounds, I'll go ahead and take care of it all at the same time. So on the other eye, I'll show you where I started with too little concealer, and that's not really going to cut it, so I needed more. And now I've got too much concealer, but what I'll do if I get too much concealer is just blot it out with my finger, because my finger is going to remove a lot of that. And I'll also wipe off the excess on the back of my hand before I go back into working on that inner eye. And if you see my finger go up, that means I'm blotting off the excess. There's two types of tape that I recommend for doing this kind of eyebrow. One is the type that you can get at CVS. It's called Gentle Paper Tape for Wounds. And it's just that. It's very gentle and it's not going to harm your face. And the type of paper tape that I'm using today, which is called an adhesive fabric eyelash tape. The one I'm using is for sensitive skin, and I will put the link for this in the description. Now I'm going to show you the before and after so you can really see the difference that eyebrows make. But before that, I'd like to ask a favor. If you enjoyed this in any way, please give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you thought of this video. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you're subscribed and turn on those notifications so anytime I post, you'll know about it. There's the before and there's the after. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it for you. You, my friend, are amazing and beautiful, and don't you ever forget it.